Hello, hello, everybody. It is Blind Metal Gamer here with you once again, and it is now time for another discussion stream. And in this live chat, we're gonna discuss EA Sports UFC 5. In the last one, I talked about how to make WWE 2K25 accessible for players without sight, and in this one, I want to talk about EA Sports UFC 5 and future EA Sports UFC games. Now, as you all know, EA Sports UFC 5. It was the first EA Sports UFC game on current gen consoles, PS5, Xbox Series X, and S. And I remember EA really touting, "Oh, it's going to have good accessibility. It's going to have all this accessibility." And so I pre-order it, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to be great." And then, as you all know, in the WWE 2K25 accessibility stream I discussed how around that time my vision changed. Now, this meant, okay, would I even be able to play UFC 5? I didn't know. So the launch day comes and it's time, 6 p.m. Eastern, and so I boot up the game. I was going to do a day one stream. And basically, I fire it up and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, what the actual hell here? Because you would think this being EA, they got Madden, they got the NHL series, all that's accessible. And, I mean, come on. So what I want to do in this stream, in this live chat, is I want to discuss, through future updates, how UFC 5 can be made accessible. And I want to give a shout out to Audio Assassin 16. He made a very valid point. The first thing I'm going to talk about in this is a screen reader. Guys, this is a no-brainer. If you can do it in Madden 25 and whatnot, if you can do it in NHL 25, and then you can do it in NCAA College Football 25, why can't you go back into UFC 5 and give us the screen reader? I mean, it's a no-brainer, and it'll make the game accessible to more players. I mean, that is something that definitely could be done and should be done, and I think that should be a standard for all EA games. That screen reader. Now, another thing. Now, just to be clear, EA Sports UFC 5 is a one-on-one fighting game, so there's no tag team mode, no cameo modes, just you versus your opponent. I think there should be, for, again, menu navigation, full screen reader support, not just a menu narrator, but it would read every screen to you in that game. I mean, from the time you boot it up to the time you shut it down and everything in between, there should be a screen reader. And none of this having to turn it on, it should be on by default. Um, so, yeah, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the screen reader piece. Now, again, it would read every single screen to the player from the main menu, options menus, settings, move lists, character selection, and all that. So now that we got menu navigation and all that out of the way, I'm going to talk about another accessibility point for EA Sports UFC 5, and that is audio indicators. Now you're probably thinking, oh my God, Blind Motor Gamer, how can this be done? It's very simple. There again, it would be having the audio indicators, the click, click, click type sound or whatever they would use to let you know how far or close you are to your opponent. This would be very easy to implement, and then um, there could be audio sounds cues for each punch or kick because you get control of a limb with each face button. And then, have different audio pitches for, say, weak punches, strong punches, and body punches and kicks. And then when you go down to the canvas with a takedown, there should be maybe different audio cues for that as well. Along with vibration cues from the controller, the DualSense, and then when you get into your ground game, your submission and your ground and pound, again, have audio cues for those things as well. Plus, let's say you're in that submission system, right? And you got him in a rear naked choke or a Kimura. You're cranking back. You got the pressure on them, and you want them to tap real quick. So let's say you're having to spin the stick. There should be not only a vibrator, but an audio indicator to let the player know if he or she is in the correct spot. And then for the button mashing mini games, again, audio indicators will work well here too, to let the player know which button to push. Have an audio indicator for each button on the controller. That would really make this game more blind user accessible. And then another thing I'm going to talk about, audio descriptive cutscenes. I know that I don't think there's a lot in the UFC 5 game, but for when there is, there should be audio descriptive cutscenes to help the player know what's going on screen. And as far as controls, they already have simplified controls, so that's good. Now, if it only, there needs to be the menu narrator, screen reader support, not just a narrator, but full-on screen reader support to ensure that the game is fully accessible as far as menu navigation. And it would read every move for every character in that list. Now, as far as Creative Fighter, because that game does have a Creative Fighter mode, that screen reader would help with the navigation in that menu as well. And it should read if you're online playing and who you're playing against, what their gamer tag is. That would be cool. Now, as far as audio indicators, again, for how far or close you are to your opponent, for each type of punch, each type of kick, the takedowns, when you're on the ground, when you're in a submission, things like that. That would make it very, more accessible. And then I'm going to talk, again, simplified controls. We got those in there. Now, personally speaking, I'm not going to lie. I stopped playing UFC 5 after like one session. I said to hell with it because I couldn't play it. There was no accessibility there. And to me, it was just a flop. I want to use this opportunity to talk about how it can be made better. Now, as far as once I've discussed audio indicators, I've discussed screen reader, I've discussed audio description for in-game cutscenes, simplified controls, and what they ought to do with these simplified controls is not only when you go online with it, but if you're offline, it'll let you play the game either way in either mode. I discussed in my WWE 2K25 stream how the game would not let you take the controls that you set up online, and I believe UFC 5 will. Although, again, I'd stop playing because of my situation. So, as far as that, that's something I'm not familiar with. Now, as far as the Creative Fighter, that would rely heavily on the screen reader to make it accessible, and it would make it a lot more user-friendly. And as far as the screen reader, how it should work is when you fire up the game, it should come on and ask, do you want to enable the in-game screen reader? Then click yes or no. Of course, me, I would pick yes. And it should be a full-on screen reader. You know, if they need inspiration, look at Mortal Kombat 1, look at Marvel's Spider-Man 2, look at The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 and what they did with their screen readers. And that'll give you a good indication as to how to improve that part of accessibility for EA Sports UFC 5 and potentially future EA Sports UFC games. Because I do want to cover that as well. Now, as far as, like I said, I think I've covered everything for UFC 5. Now, I do want to talk about future UFC games. Now, they're probably not talking about them just yet, but you know, in the background, they're in development. They're being worked on in the background where we don't know, squat of what's going on. Now, as far as these future games, they could apply the screen reader, the audio description, the audio indicators, simplified controls, things like that to these future UFC games to make them more accessible. And by making the games current gen only, I think that is a good thing. Now, as far as I'm going to kind of be a bit of a nitpick here and diverge from the topic for a bit. I think that having the streamer safe mode for licensed music is a good thing. Um, because as it stands right now, you can't play licensed music on YouTube. So there's that. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, making it accessible. They could use these future blueprints to make UFC 6 and whatnot accessible for wherever they put it. Now, as far as my time with the game and my thoughts and impressions, you're probably not going to see that game. Um, and real quick, I do want to point out that UFC 5, I get it was the first UFC on current gen consoles, but I still believe they could have used that opportunity to go out with a bang and really show what they could do. Now, I'm hoping that the next UFC game, whatever that's going to be, UFC 6 or whatever they call it, will be more accessible for blind and low vision players with a full on screen reader. That would make it easier. And then the audio indicators I discussed, and then audio descriptions for any type of cutscene. Now, as far as future accessibility, like I said, I think I've discussed everything for UFC 5 and UFC 6 and whatnot going forward. So, I'm going to wrap this one up. It's going to be a bit of a short one. Yeah, very true. I mean, yeah, I guess EA isn't going to do a damn thing for accessibility. Um, you're saying to hell with what, UFC 5 or the accessibility part, or both? Yeah, I know it does to me too, Shiller Prime Time. I mean, they could have really done well with this. They could have really knocked it out of the damn park and said, hey, we give a damn about accessibility. We at EA give a fuck about accessibility and getting these accessible. Now, as far as why they did what they did, I don't know. Now, yes, I did drop the F bomb because I wanted to get the point across. My point is this: if they can make Madden, okay, and college football and NHL more accessible, why can't they do this for the UFC games? Because there are a group of people like myself who, I mean, I was eager to play that game and I would love to get back in it if I knew, as a consumer who is a legally blind gamer, that they would have the accessibility that is needed for gamers like myself. Oh yeah, UFC 5. Yeah, Okay, yeah, they probably won't do a damn thing for that. But okay, now I want to talk about future UFC games. You know, and I know, they're in the background being cooked. We just don't know about it yet. They're cooking them up in the background. They're preparing the sauce, but they're not going to give it to us yet. So I think if EA is listening to this, and I'm not trying to be ranting and raging and raving and all this, what I want to do here is talk about okay, UFC 5 in there. Let's work on UFC 6, 7, 8, and make these as accessible as they can be for as many people as possible. So I think, like I talked about before, full screen reader support at launch, not via an update, but at launch, not requiring you to turn it on at the beginning, have it come on when you boot the game up, and give you the option to enable it at the beginning. Audio description for in-game cutscenes, simplified controls, audio cues to let the player know where they are in the octagon, how close or far they are from the opponent, audio cues to improve gameplay, such as audio cues for punches, kicks, takedowns, etc., audio cues for submissions to let the player know what type of submission it is, what minigame they're doing, and there's audio game cues for both the minigames, the stick minigame and the button mashing minigame. Or not the button mashing minigame, but the one where you have to hit the L2 and R2 buttons and find the sweet spots. Have audio cues for those as well as the part where you have to spin around the right stick and you have to find the sweet spot to choke your opponent out. Now, and make them tap. Now, if they would add audio cues to those, that would be great. And have the screen reader read the tutorials in the game as well to let the player know what to do. That would make the game more accessible for players without sight. Now, another thing I'm going to talk about, and I said descriptive audio and cutscenes. Now, if there is any type of in-game cutscenes in the next UFC game, be sure to put descriptive audio in to make it accessible for blind players. Because all we're asking for here, EA, is make your UFC games accessible. Make them fully accessible for players who cannot see. Yeah, I know. It is. That's why I don't buy Madden. I didn't buy NCAA college football. I purchased UFC 5, folks, not knowing what was going to happen to my vision. I didn't know that I was going to encounter big, significant, big vision changes between the time I pre-ordered it and the time it came out. So it just kind of, goes to show you life happens in mysterious ways. But I want to use this opportunity not to complain on the past, but to focus on what can EA do to improve their product in the future. Um, UFC 5, like I said, they may not be able to do anything with it. But UFC, the next one, they need to definitely up their game as far as accessibility. EA, I know you can do it. I know it can be done. You have the money, you have the funding, you have the resources. Do it. Let your accessibility person that you hired, and you know who they are, do their damn job and do what they got to do to provide EA games from EA Sports UFC 5, the EA Sports FC Club, whatever BioWare is cooking up next, and more to make these as accessible as possible. That is what I, as a blind gamer and advocate, is asking for EA. It isn't just me. Hey, show prime time. It's not just me. It's other blind players too. And hell, man, show them this video. Show them this. When I'm done, you share this to them because they need to know. And again, I'm not trying to scold them or shame them or condemn them. All I'm asking for and suggesting is ways to make your UFC games and other EA products in terms of games more accessible to the blind and low vision gaming community. Now, I plan to do a video like this on Dragon Age the Veilguard, but I wanted to focus on UFC 5 tonight and other UFC games because I feel like that needs to be addressed. And I've been wanting to do this for quite a while anyway. Thanks, man. So yeah, so I'm gonna go on and kind of wrap this up here. I feel like I've covered everything that needs to be covered for this. So if somebody at EA is watching this or listening to this, if you would like to ask me like questions about what I think would make your UFC games more accessible, feel free to reach out. I would be more than happy to converse with you about accessibility and talk about how to make these a very accessible experience for blind and low vision gamers. I would, like I said, love to help in any way I can. So if you have any questions for me, just ask away, and I am here to answer your questions. So, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, liking, subscribing, and staying with me to the very end. The next discussion that I will be doing on this will be on Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, and I should be doing it on January the 14th if all goes well. But that will be the next one I do. And then after that, I plan on doing one on Dragon Age the Veil Guard. That's the next one I want to talk about. So, and also I'll be streaming Mortal Kombat 1 later tonight. So that's coming as well with Winter Warfare. So with that being said, I want to thank Shallow. Hey, Aaron. The Hulk Hogan being booed, I was shocked. So yeah, Shallow Prime Time. I want to thank you for joining, and I want to thank everybody for joining and listening and watching. So yeah, EA, if you have any questions about for me about what I think would make this accessible, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here for you. So okay, with that being said, until next time, if you like what you see and you want more, as always, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you know when I go live with a video like this and freak and more gameplay of accessible video games on PS5. Now, I might be dabbling into some non-accessible video games with sighted assistance via collaboration. I just got to work out how to do that. So when I get those ready to rock and roll for you, I'll get in for you hardcore style with them. So, with that being said, until next time, so long, stay warm, stay safe, and peace out.